Hey y'all, this is your girl BMORE and welcome to the Dummies Cauldron.
Hey, this is your girl BMORE, and today we are doing the weekly roundup. This weekly roundup is a little bit late, but we still have pre-existing and also long-term and sometimes mid transits that occur or pop off for this week. So before we dive in, I just want to say if you enjoy the content, feel free to sign up to my free tier on Patreon so that way you don't miss a beat. And you always can stay up to date with me. And whenever you're ready, you can always jump to a paid membership or not. You can also buy collections. So even if you're not in the space to have a recurring payment, you can also buy collections, which I will be setting up soon for people. So that way you can participate. If you're interested in the book tier, you can buy the book tier. Whatever the case may be, but you can just buy it outright versus having reoccurring payments. So, bottom line, sign up to that free tier so that way we can stay connected. So let's get into the video. So the topic for this week, this will be from June 29th to the 5th. The topic for this week is the lessons of superficiality. And we are just right behind, like a few days after the new moon in Cancer. And things are starting to shift a little bit. We have Venus coming out of Taurus, but we also have Mercury coming into Leo. And we just really started the early phases of Mars being in Virgo beside K2. So what does that mean? Realistically, there are aspects of Venus and Mercury, and they deal with discernment and they deal with taste and decision making and how we have these relationships. They're going into more masculine signs of Gemini and Leo, but to some certain aspects they can also be seen as superficial or lighthearted and less deep versus their transition from Taurus and Cancer, where we were diving into what we value and our feelings and past memories. Now we're getting into something a little bit different. Okay, I will say, even though we're getting into some superficiality or more lighter things, we're not going so deep into things. Mercury is still squaring off with Pluto, and so this could lead to people having obsessive and or possibly depressive thoughts, because there's a thin line between intensity and focus and just being obsessed, and some people may not know the difference, which is why some of these things, these planets with Venus, is how we socialize and how we, to a certain extent, how we express ourselves through the world, and Mercury decision making. This is a low-key a blessing. This can have some type of blessing for us where we can kind of break out of some of the stress and the chaos. Okay, so let's get into it. On the 29th, we still experiencing that Mars Pluto kind of transit. So there are issues with authority, issues with manipulation, obsession, depression. I would really tell you guys to try to funnel this energy into research, study, deep thinking, persuasive communication, but also just willpower and self-improvement. That would be the best thing you can do for it versus just hyper focusing on things. Just use that time to just really lock in and get yourself together. Mercury moves into Leo, and so when Mercury is here, our thoughts are dramatic. We are attached to almost how we to some extent how you feel about ideas. We are visionary now because this is a fire sign, and fire signs can project themselves out to the future. We're idealistic, we're romantic, and all of that is really centered for us. We prefer dignity, refinement, and we want to make a good impression on people. We want to be in some type of authority or have some type of good social standing. We want to make sure that we make a good impression on people, and that's not bad, because you want to be on your best behavior, and that could probably mitigate certain things. But for some people who have tunnel vision, they can really be obsessed with people are saying and doing in reference to them. And I just think that we could use that energy for more productive things. Now, this is good for problem solving, but we tend to be problem solvers that ignore details. I would highly try to check if there's anything that you're missing or you kind of like breeze over in attempt to make things work. We do have executive ability where we can do like proper leadership, where we can like set the tone for things. This is good for teaching, success in theater, the arts, education, and possibly stock market. There can be some issues with stubbornness, indulgence, hot-headedness, being moody, being an exaggerator, self-centered, because it's Leo. And this is a thing for financial ups and downs. So, everyone's like, well, what are we going to do? Okay, there's a certain level of improvising that we will have to do, but try to think of details when we're handling finances. If you're not detail oriented, we can breeze over certain steps. So try to just focus on that. The second thing I would highly recommend for this transit is that have some discipline, because there's a level of like indulgence sometimes the Mercury and Leo deals with, and they kind of like more luxurious things. So try not to do too much. Try to be disciplined, come up with like good habits and stuff like that. This transit will last to September the 2nd. So Mercury will be in Leo to September the 2nd. Now we'll say around the 18th, we are going to have a retrograde, a Mercury retrograde, and it will end August 11th. So I will do that in a whole separate video. It's not going to be this one, but it'll be a whole separate video, because this whole month will be a month of retrogrades between Mercury, Saturn, Uranus, you name it. There's a whole lot of planets retrograding and going back. So I might just make one big giant video talking about all the retrogrades, and then the second half talking about how the retrogrades will impact other people. We'll see, depending how the notes are, if I have time to do a big lump one or break them up. We also experience at the beginning of the week, the moon is in Leo. So there's a lot of temperamental energy that's kind of going on. You have issues with women. Sometimes we're holding on grudges. We can feel a lot of mental anxiety. There's a generalness. People are principled. They want to stand by what they believe in, but there's an attachment to the mother. And at worst, there is arrogance. We also see that the moon is trying Chiron, and so there are healing issues with the mother and women, public, and issues with just being happy. We might not be popular. We might struggle in social skills, to maintain habits, to maintain sleep. Processing events from the past can be difficult, and we have to face long-held emotions. This could also make problems for writing, food, homeopathy, teaching, or learning by way of your experiences. We have to get to a place where trust is restored, and it makes all of this easier, so that way we can overcome those things. So we overcome all of the issues, the trauma, and the problems from our past, and we can find redemption, especially after abandonment, and we can see people just generally being kind, kindness. We also see us being able to thrive and survive, and possibly having to do things that are therapeutic. We also see the moon is making some hard aspects to Uranus, so there's a restless and impulsive moodiness kind of energy. There's a desire for change, but if we're too emotional, we can be rebuffed. So people who aren't interested, we have to learn how to be emotional without doing too much, because then people are going to be like, over it. We have to try mental stimuli, because there's a desire for change. And so if that's the case, trying new foods, routines, games, going for walks, technology. I would tell you to be aware of electronics and electricity at the time, because sometimes, even though we're interested in technology, they might not work the best. A woman or friends could bring you opportunity, and this is the same for the internet or groups of people or organizations. Later that day, we have the moon going into Virgo. The moon moves very quickly. And so there's a modest and financially comfortable focus now. Being soft-spoken, intelligent, you may live abroad or having interactions with people who live abroad this day. Skilled in the arts. But there's a lot of emotional discrimination and being able to separate things. But at the same time, there's still a lot of oversharing. There's a tendency to be bossy, and there might be some low emotional intelligence. We we kind of intellectualize how we feel, but we don't really understand others. And so we may desire to seek knowledge to use in practical ways, maybe to like understand people better, like therapy and psychology. But it still can make for argumentative or nature and emotional insecurity, especially for women. This is good for medicine, detachment, and being non-clingy. For men, usually when they experience a Virgo moon, they really don't want emotional demands to be set on them. But in general, like, people can be very critical and cold, but also they don't like to be criticized too. It's an interesting combo. The moon makes a positive aspect to Jupiter, so again, easygoing, happy, that can broaden everyone's energy. You may get some positive news from afar or from a different country, or we may even get positive news through your father, legalities, or education, if it's properly placed in your chart, your own personal chart. And favors can be granted now. And the moon does conjunct Mars, and so it can create an impatient and compromising nature. People are sensitive to criticism, but they want to give it. So this is also like we talked about earlier with the moon being in Virgo. So they want to criticize, they want to say how they feel, they can be impatient and uncompromising, but again, they're very sensitive to criticism from other people. There's a daring, risk-taking energy now. Willpower is strong, and this is great for creativity and positive forms of leadership. Just have to be careful of being easily irritable, and just use this transit to properly brainstorm. The moon and the sun make positive aspects at this time, and so it's good for popularity and being happy, and overall just looking good and feeling good. You know, a good, successful family life and success in career, and just a balanced ego and emotional kind of like vibe. Also, the only thing I will say is that it can be an easy placement to be apathetic. Now, June 30th, the Pluto and Neptune positively aspect each other, and so by the 30th we'll be doing some more soul searching. We'll be trying to examine our beliefs. Maybe we have to revamp our philosophy. Maybe we revamp laws and ethics, and it might be different from where our family had those types of things set, or like what we find as the norm. This is also a good time to study metaphysics, tap into your subconscious, doing meditation, quiet time, walks, exploring your tics, your urges, your motives, finding secret admirers, or how people feel about you, low-key. You might find that out. And this is also good for art and creativity. Now, on a more ideal part, like dealing with like ideals and like what people feel about their beliefs, people might be more prone to fight for human rights. You know, there could be changes in legal systems where there's open government or like forms of freedom of expression. And so maybe people, either they agree with freedom of expression that comes by way maybe of like legalities or not. We also see some people that might drop out of society in general. Now, this transit isn't a short transit. This transit will be going on for quite some time, about how people feel and soul searching and all this other stuff. So this can take some time. Maybe people have to revamp their philosophies and what they believe in and all this other stuff. So good luck, everyone. The moon will also be sextiling Lilith, and so this is great for winning over people, the family, women. We're popular, we're happy, and we feel like we are accepted now. This is great for survival and the things that we need for survival, like sleep, food, habits, etc. This is a good time for creativity, the music, and the arts. Maybe we are more attractive now. Maybe there's more seduction and arousal now. We also can remove complicated feelings and emotions. Our esteem is high. We're more content, we're clever, we're smart, and maybe we feel like we have more of an emotional control, and we can like relax and reset things, and we feel like we have this really deep inner strength. On July 1st, Lilith and Saturn positively aspect each other, and so we can win people over with confidence and leadership. We are accepted. Even things that we feel like, you know, weren't usually accepted, we're accepted. And so we can also get acceptance from the father, men, kids, people in authority. We can also be successful in possibly fighting back or getting people's lick back, whoever believes in that. And Also in our career. This is great for creativity, fashion. For some people, maybe they find men or authority attractive or arousing, and so this can uptick of like affairs and stuff like that. And we can be able to remove complications from our reputation, from our careers, and our esteem is high. We're content, we're clever, and we get some type of power or award or recognition from something. We also have the moon opposing Rahu. So this can create almost like a weird polarity, because even though we're getting all this acceptance, maybe the happiness is disrupted somewhere. Maybe it's by mass trends or some type of collective experiences. And so we might feel crazy. We might feel off or unpopular. Maybe we have diseases. Also, because the moon is involved, this can also be stemming from improper sleeping, improper habits, improper foods. And so this can really create a massive disturbance. The moon is also trine Venus, and so this is great for socializing, hanging out with people, romance, dates, home, family. Also, hobbies, gardening, decor, stuff like that. And this is also, randomly enough, really good for the military. We also have where the moon trines Uranus, and so we can be emotionally detached now. This is good for dealing with groups and meetings and organizations and trying to understand what our goals are. We can get positive surprises, and this is great for networking and innovations, experiencing new and different things, maybe by way of science, technology, spiritualism, just all around positive changes, which can be good, especially from those being able to hold on to all of those mental disturbances or things that are like bothering us subconsciously, even though consciously things are going well, like outwardly things are going good, but maybe we're like irritated or plagued by something. Now we also have the moon in Libra, and so we're more religious, we're more intelligent, philosophical, fond of travel. This may improve wealth, attraction to commercial ventures, being emotionally refined, learning through trial and error. Maybe an uptick of aggressive women, extreme highs and lows, fickle, critical, charmed, but still lazy and impractical, but also anxious at the same time, which is a wild combo. On July 2nd, we have the moon oppose Saturn. And so we have low energy, pessimism, more responsibilities are on you. You feel like you don't have any help from anyone. We have to learn how to delegate. There could be delays, but high ambition. But we also are very sensitive at this time. So we have to keep that in mind and not take everything to heart. The moon is opposed Neptune, and so here we can have emotional confusion, sensitivity to people and environment. The briefest comments or actions can trigger upset. We have to make sure we don't jump to conclusions. Make sure we check what facts are and what reality is, and so that way we're not getting caught into miscommunication. The sixth sense is high, or perception is high. This is great for daydreams, movies, and sentimentality, things that we can do off, alone, away from people, in seclusion, or that kind of like takes us away from the world. We also have the moon trine Pluto, and so we can emotionally tap in with feelings. These can be typically uplifting feelings. We can tend to the domestic life, restore order and balance in work and home, cleaning, and letting go of what you no longer need. This is overall good for self-improvement and willpower. We also have the moon square Jupiter, and so people can be emotional and possibly unrealistic. Maybe we feel like we get rejected from people and women. Maybe we're unhappy, but we have to be more realistic. If people are too emotional that day, it's very easy to get rebuffed. So if you say, hey, I just didn't like that. Okay, this is what it is. It's cool. If you go into too much of a detail, there's a high chance that people don't want to hear what you have to say, and you could be like, whatever, I'm out. The other thing is, we could also just have our standards and our expectations too high, and we also can just be unrealistic. We're not having things based in reality, and so it becomes more emotional and sensitive because we're not that none of those things are happening, or where we thought our perception was is really, really off. So just keep that in mind. This is also a good time to interact or talk to the public and women. This is great for sales, and maybe women can be helpful at this time, but remember, keep your emotions and your expectations in check. The moon is squared the sun, and so this is our first quarter moon from the new moon on the 25th. And so here we see ego versus emotion, personality issues, health issues, issues with the parents and partners, and inner turmoil. The moon is in Libra and it wants emotional refinement, but the sun is in Cancer and it wants tenacity and determination. It wants to keep going. It doesn't want to change anything. We have to be careful that we're not getting into more trouble and not becoming lazy and uncaring and careless. Excuse me. And fickle. There's an imbalance in relationships. Maybe we give more than we take, and maybe we take more than we give. And that is something that we have to keep in mind. If you want more peace, I would highly recommend you to give more than you're taking. And that will also debt a lot of the drama too. If you feel like there's more irritability and all this drama, maybe we need to give more, especially since the moon in Libra, it has such positive qualities of emotional refinement. But we also talked about too how it can be, kind of all over the place because it wants to be fickle, but also it's aggressive, the extreme highs and lows, but also critical and impractical while having also bad nerves. So, if we want that, we have to be open to all that comes with that. Also, there's a level of being gullible, being selfish, and attention seeking, especially for people who maybe their nerves are high, whatever is going on with them and the insecurities that they feel, maybe they feel triggered to attention seek. So we have to make sure why we're interacting with people in the public, because again, it could just be a harder time interacting or trying to socialize as much as we want to. On July 3rd, the moon opposes Chiron, and so this can create wounds around women, mom, family, food, sleep habits, problems in writing in the public, issues with processing emotions and not being able to express them properly, not having any outlets, people can't survive or having survival issues or the things that we need to survive, no second chances. There can be grief, shyness, running from emotions, and overall feelings of spiritual loss. On the 4th, happy Independence Day, Venus and Uranus conjunct, and so people can be willful and emotionally intense, but they're also genius and they prefer to have a life of peace. Now they can intellectualize life, which may or may not, depending how they're doing this, may or may not help from all of the overwhelming, intense, emotional feelings we feel this week. But the other good thing is that you won't be taken for granted. So that imbalance of emotional give and take, you're going to want to lock that off. Look, I do this for you, you do this for me. Let's not have things go off like that. This also increases the desire to be unique. Now, the other thing is it does increase quick and unusual relationships. And so these relationships start in just as quickly as they start. Grand opening, grand closing. This also triggers people to be, for some people, unfaithful, kind of flaky in relationships, whether this is friendship or not. I also see too that people can mix friendship and love and friendship. They're all the same. Overall, it makes for a more social, I guess you could say sociableness, meeting new friends, getting gifts, lucky. This is great for teamwork, and maybe you're seen as the MVP on your team. The moon also goes into Scorpio, and so this is not a strong moon. The moon likes variety and it likes change, but the problem isn't that Scorpio is a water sign. The problem is that Scorpio is a fixed sign. It doesn't want to change. It doesn't want to move around. It doesn't want to do any of those things. And so for the moon, they can become possessive and controlling here in Scorpio. It's hard for them to process things and let things go. This is very, very, very overwhelming. So here we can have mental instability. We can be estranged from our family. We can have weak health. We can have issues with expressing ideas properly. Now, on the positive side, it does make people law-abiding, but there's a tendency for dishonesty because they can't express yourself properly. People are emotionally possessive, oversexed, and just indulgent all the way around. Food, everything you can indulge in, that's what they're doing. Emotionally indulgent, all over the sex, all of that. For women, this is a sensual and gentle type of disposition, but for men, they want a partner that they can possess and consume in secret or behind closed doors, but they also want a partner that can intuitively know what they want without opening their mouths, because remember, this placement has a problem expressing themselves and what they actually really, really desire. And that also makes them act out. They'll act out their emotions versus saying what it is they want. So like picking fights and starting all this trouble just to say like, I didn't like that joke, you hurt my feelings. You see what we're getting here? Like all of this extremeness. So it's very important that we learn to open up our mouths and we learn to let things go when we need to. We also have the moon square Pluto, which increases jealousy, possessiveness, power struggles, money issues, controlling people, particularly controlling women or people in the public and possibly family members. You need to learn to distance yourself. Try to get some perspective, clean up, and release things you no longer need. And if you need to relocate, go somewhere else for the time being. We see the moon also positively aspect Jupiter, so there is a happy, confidence, happy-go-lucky energy, but we have to make sure, because the moon isn't strong, even though it's positively aspecting Jupiter, we have to make sure we're not holding on to things or we're not being possessive and controlling, while trying to also like balance this happy-go-lucky thing. It's kind of like bizarre, it's a bit harder to be happy-go-lucky when you can't let stuff go. So if you can release and reset your willpower, like focus on determination, what you want to accomplish, I think that's a better way to focus your energy, and also not being, like I said, emotionally indulgent, like rolling in emotions all day and let them stew. By July 5th, Venus goes into Gemini. This will last to July the 31st. We also see people in positions of responsibility and authority now. Money can also be established at this time, or well established. People can be fond of music, but the downside is that people could be more fickle and detached. There could be issues with freedom or wanting freedom in general. People are funny and attracted to smart or clever people. There's an uptick interest in literature, poems, and overall a lack of longevity. People may also want variety in more than one partner, so people might be running around. We are superficial here, and unless there's a balance of fixed signs, or things are positioned in fixed signs or in accordance with fixed signs, they're very superficial here. This is also good for relatives, neighbors, and siblings wanting variety and being able to intellectualize our feelings. Now, I will say, outside of just running all over the place and being fresh, I will say this is a really, really good placement for kind of breaking up some of those heavier themes that we had earlier this week and trying to just having fun. I think this was also good too, as long as we're not doing it so much. This can also be a positive placement to help us, think through our emotions and help us to process them properly versus just stewing and boiling in all of these feelings. Now, I will say that it could be a bit hard trying to do this, because we may feel a temptation to, there's a side of us where we want to have fun and let stuff go, and there's a side of us where we're holding on. This can create a lot of disease and obstacles. I'm gonna be quite frank, y'all. Like, if at this point, if you can't have fun and let stuff go, then it could create more problems for you. Now, I will say on the flip side, depending on how irresponsible you're being with letting go and having fun, it could still create more problems. So we have to balance what we're holding on to and what we're releasing. But the fun stuff is good, because the superficiality can help us get to more the lighter topics and things of life. Life is always handing out an L somewhere. You don't have to worry about hard times, because hard times, they just pop up, So let's keep that in mind. Venus is also positively aspecting Saturn, and so this is good for conservative long-term investments, real estate, getting praises in your careers, or making plans for your careers that can pay off long-term. This is great for solidifying and strengthening relationships, and we may even bump into someone from the past. This is also good for DIY projects. So because Saturn makes a positive aspect to Venus, and Venus does not want to think long-term or about longevity, this can really help everyone, because we can start off strong and really think about what we want long term while also having fun. And as long as we can work on releasing and letting go of things that we no longer need, not trying to be controlling, not trying to be possessive, because we don't want to be controlled. We don't want people trying to tell us what to do. So if you don't want to be told what to do, then don't tell other people what to do. Okay? Venus also positively aspects Neptune, and so this is great for romance, dates, music, fantasies, dealing with lovers, sharing the joy, kind words, hugs, socializing with friends, being single, and mingling. Lilith also positively aspects Mars, so this is good for like squashing some beefs, particularly like wiping the floor with people who have beefs with you. This is great for acceptance and getting friends and families and relatives to accept us. This is also makes us very clever and logical and being able to win and defeating obstacles and complications. This also increases sexuality and confidence. The moon makes a positive aspect to, the moon squares Mercury, doesn't make a positive aspect. So we can have more emotional thinking. Our emotions are kind of like guiding our reasoning. And so there's an issue between what's logical and what's emotional. And sometimes emotions can override logic. I really would recommend for people, if you can't postpone decisions, like have like deep decisions, not like what you want to eat for lunch, just stick to the facts. If you can't postpone a serious conversation, just stick to facts. And this can also uptick conflict with the public and women. The moon also sextiles Mars now, so our enthusiasm is high. This is great for projects, brainstorming, team efforts, and spreading cheer and confidence. This is also good for physical outlets, which can also probably help all those emotions that are stewing around. Watch your speeding though, that's all I would say, and watch how much risk taking you do. But any physical outlet that you can think of doing things like, with your actual body, this will also help. You also have the moon conjunct Lilith, and so this is connected to nighttime events, emotional focus. It may be hard to place like these mysterious feelings. We may feel like something is wrong, or we may be desiring protection. There can be more moodiness. Maybe family or home life can be a mystery, or never reaching a resolution to how you actually feel about something. There can be a focus on sexuality, rejection, shame, and competition, and death, or the end of matters. Maybe it's not someone actually dying, but maybe something just ends, and that can also be seen as death. We also seeing an uptick in self-expression. We don't know how to feel, and everything is so complicated. We can also see the ideas of betrayal, creativity, and having to pause and reset everything. This is good to deal with the past. Lilith can give us cunning and survival, things that come with it too. So like food, shelter, emotions, sex, etc. This is a dark night of the soul, and you could be attached to it. Like what we thought would happen and what we thought life would be is different. And so this can help us to balance karma, intuition, and have more wisdom, and realize what is worth living for and what helps us to survive and keep going. We also have the sun conjunct the moon, and so we look good, we feel good. This is great for dealing with kids, women, public, authority, men, just everyone. This gives us popularity without much struggle. There's ease. Everyone is there and open to help us, but there's a issue with being apathetic and not caring, and possibly being less assertive. That may be a positive thing, because sometimes during this week we have more assertion and there can be like a lot of grumpiness, but it really can help us get over and process a lot of things, and we can have more ease at the end of the week. Okay, and this is the end of your weekly roundup. You guys be safe. I love you. Bye.